Hello and welcome to Portsmouth This Week. I'm your host, Conley Zani. This show is under the auspices of Rich Rayner, the Portsmouth Town Administrator. Together, Rich, myself, and the entire Portsmouth This Week team are on a mission to build community. We do that by bringing you accurate and timely information about the issues that impact you. We introduce you to your neighbors, leaders in our community, the faces and personalities that make up the fabric of this very magical place to live. As many of you know, we have an election coming up on November 2nd. I am very excited to be talking about elections today, and I want to show our viewers this amazing graphic when I went to the Secretary of State's website that shows who's involved in protecting, administering, safeguarding our elections. There are three entities: the State Board of Elections, your local Board of Canvassers, and the Department of State. So I am thrilled to introduce our three guests today, representatives of each of these entities. My guests are Miguel Nunez from the State Board of Elections. Miguel, very nice to see you today.
Likewise.
Jackie Schultz, who is our Registrar of Voters and the clerk of the Portsmouth Board of Canvassers. Jackie, thanks, great to have you. And Rob Rock, the Director of Rhode Island's elections from our Secretary of State's office. Rob, high fives from the distance here.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, thank you all. As you probably know even more than I do, there is a lot of fear out there about elections in general across our nation, right? And we really wanted to have a show that was really about what are those processes, what are we doing in Rhode Island to make sure we have fair elections. So thanks very much for coming and talking about all of this. Rob, can I just start with you as a representative of the Secretary of State's office? Let me just open it up. What are some of the roles that you play and what are the things to keep in mind as voters?
Sure, thanks Conley, and thanks for having me. So the Secretary of State's office has a number of roles in elections. We make all the ballots for the entire state. Whether you vote in Portsmouth or Middletown or Little Compton, Tiverton, our office makes the ballots. We certify candidates. We send out all of the mail ballots to anyone who has applied for a mail ballot as well. One of the most important roles that we have, though, is overseeing the central voter registration system, which is the database that houses all of the registered voters. It houses all of the candidate information. It's what we use to generate the ballots. It's really the engine behind the scenes that helps administer elections.
Right.
And one of the major roles within the central voter registration system is making sure that our voter list is as accurate as possible.
Right.
That's kind of the first step in the process when we're talking about people feeling comfortable with elections. They have to be comfortable knowing that the people who are registered to vote should be registered to vote from where they live. So we take a number of steps to make sure that the voter list is as accurate as possible. And we work with Jackie in Portsmouth and all of the local cities and towns and the Board of Elections to do things like voter list maintenance. That happens every single day. A couple quick examples. Anytime.
Yeah, what does that mean, voter list
maintenance, right? We want to make sure that people are registered to vote where they actually live. People who have moved away, people who have passed away, people who no longer want to be registered are taken off the list.
Got it.
So that on election day, the poll books have the accurate voter registration records for everybody that's eligible to vote.
Okay, that seems like one of the most important things, and that's what people are concerned about, right?
That's right, yes.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How do you maintain that voter list?
So it happens every single day, and a couple of examples of how that's done is if someone goes to the DMV to get a new license or update their information, automatically, legislation was passed a few years ago that says that when you come in contact with the Department of Division of Motor Vehicles, you're automatically going to be registered to vote unless you don't want to be, unless you opt out.
Okay.
And so every single night, the central voter registration system gets a list of everybody who during that day registered to vote. Or change their information. And every morning, Jackie goes into her office, and the 39 cities and towns go into their offices, take those records, and they update them in the voter registration system. So they're updated on a daily basis.
No wonder you're so busy, Jackie.
Well, just as an example, on Tuesday, our Board of Canvassers is going to meet to canvass and correct the current list for the upcoming election. We see the voter list, it's an organism. It's constantly changing. As we speak right now, people are moving. People are moving into Portsmouth. They're moving out of Portsmouth. They're changing their mailing address. They're getting married over the weekend. They're changing their name. It is constantly evolving. So maintaining those records and maintaining accurate records is a focus, and we are very fortunate that we have the ability to do that with a wonderful database from the state.
Right.
And our office is solely dedicated to maintaining records and administering to elections. So it's quite a task, daunting task.
I am sure. I am sure.
And we've got a number of partners. You know, the Board of Elections and the 39 cities and towns are the main partners working in elections, but the Division of Motor Vehicles is also hugely helpful in registering people by federal law. We also have a connection with the Department of Health's Vital Statistics Office, where every week we get a list of people who have passed away from the list of vital statistics. We send that to the cities and towns. They update their records to take people off who have passed away. We've got an electronic connection with the Department of Corrections. So by law, if someone is incarcerated in a correctional facility upon a felony conviction, they lose their right to vote. And so we get a list every month of those folks, and they're taken off the voter rolls by the cities and towns. At the same time, we get a list from the Department of Corrections of everybody who has been released from a correctional facility, because by law, once you're released from the correctional facility, you automatically get your voting rights restored. And that list is sent to the boards of canvassers as well, and they update the list. And then one final partner is the Electronic Registration Information Center, which is ERIC for short, which is a nonprofit group made up of currently 30 states plus the District of Columbia, where we share our voter data. And we get a report back from ERIC every month or every 2 months with a list of people who have passed away according to the National Social Security Death Master File. We get a list of people who have moved to one of the other 30 states and have a newer record there, and our cities and towns will take them off the voter rolls. We also get a list of any sort of duplicate records that are within our system that the cities and towns will take care of. And then we also get in-state movers, so people who have moved within the state that perhaps we didn't catch with the DMV. So there are a number of partners to make sure that our voter lists are as accurate as possible, and I would argue that the current voter list is as accurate as it's ever been, due to the fact that we all work together and we have such a great partnership with our stakeholders.
Right.
But one point I do want to make is that the restrictions in order to remove somebody from our rolls are very stringent.
What do you mean?
It means that moms can't call me on the phone and say, Joey just moved out. He doesn't live here anymore.
Okay.
There are certain qualifications that we have to have in order to remove somebody from our list. The voter must request it, and I do need an original signature, or I receive notification from another state saying that that person is now voted in that state, or if they fill out a form, some kind of communication with us, and that's why it's important when you get mail that says official mail.
Open it.
Election mail, yeah.
Official, and
Yeah.
your son doesn't live at home anymore, do not accept it. Bring it back to the post office. And there's the process that we go through when mail is returned to us as undeliverable. That
Okay.
begins the process where we can remove them from our rolls eventually.
Yeah, I think it's, not to interject, but I think it's important with the ERIC system, what Rob was describing. A lot of that is information that's useful for sending out a mailing to voters who are in another state that perhaps forgot to cancel their registration when they moved out. So the Secretary of State's office will send them a letter with the specific form that they can sign and return in order to cancel their registration. So it is helpful because many people don't realize that it's not something that's automatic when you move to another state. It's not automatic
Right.
that state's actually going to notify us to cancel your registration.
Right. You need to reach out and communicate.
Yes, that's key.
Yes, yes. I mean, Jackie, you were telling me that every day you are on that process, right?
We get mail returned all the time.
Yes, yes.
Yes, so we're
Well,
constant.
tell me a little bit about your day in, day out. I know that you just sent out the application for this upcoming election, correct?
Yes.
So start there and tell me what's happened.
Our Board of Canvassers made the decision, because this is such an important ballot in the sense that it will affect the quality of life of all of our Portsmouth residents for years to come.
In
It
all
has a-
generations.
It has a question about students, it has a question about our seniors on it. So we opted to send mail ballot applications to all registered voters. That's a little bit over 14,000 were sent. We've currently processed 1,400 applications for mail ballots. And in that mailing, we have received returns from that, and we've updated our records accordingly and processed the mail ballot applications. But every day is different.
Yes.
Every election is different.
Yes.
Every time we go to the polls, it's a learning experience for, I think, all of us.
Yes.
So,
Now, you had expressed a concern that some people returned the application
yes.
thinking that it was actually a ballot, and it is not. You want to clarify that here and
Yes.
just drive that point home for
In
everyone?
the packet that all registered voters received, it included explanations for the ballot questions. Many people saw that as the ballot themselves and voted their choice on the explanations and mailed it back to us. If you had a return address on it, I contacted you. I sent you a new ballot application.
Yes.
However, if you didn't and there was no return address, those are the people that I really need to express. You did not vote in the election.
Right.
Please understand. And there are still options. We have in-person voting that begins next Wednesday at the town hall, and we are also going to have 4 polls open on election day.
Right.
So-
Okay, so let's talk about all the options, all the different ways to vote. And I don't know which one of my guests here is the best person to really cover that. Anybody want to raise their hand there? And
Go for it.
Miguel, he's looking at me like, I got this one. So,
So
Yeah.
as you've mentioned, you have the mail option, which is something that, an option that many Portsmouth residents have taken advantage of. But you also have the in-person emergency period, which begins on Wednesday, as Jackie stated, and runs through the day before Election Day. That is something that my board pushed heavily through the legislature last year, because the previous method of doing an emergency ballot prior to Election Day was very paper-based, and we wanted to use the technology that we had already leveraged several years ago with the electronic poll books and with this new voting equipment to get that to be as seamless and efficient as possible. So one of the ways we were able to do that was to have the law changed to allow these individuals that come in and do an emergency ballot, instead of filling out a paper application, to actually just sign in with an electronic poll book and actually get a ballot and put it into a voting machine. And that is an option that has grown increasingly popular since it was introduced early.
so tell me about
last
the
year.
word emergency. Is it an emergency anymore? Is it so? Do I have to be having an emergency or a note from my doctor or anything, or no?
You do not. There is no
Okay.
there is no reason that is required to be given, as in previous years. You just simply have to indicate on the application that you are unable to make it to the polls on Election Day, and that is by far the greatest reason that most people use to request an emergency ballot. And once you submit that application, which is done through the electronic poll book, you are given a ballot and it is able to be cast into a machine that day. And then, of course, you do have the polling place in-person option on Election Day. That is something that is growing less in popularity, but it's still something that my agency, our board, supports on Election Day, whereas testing the equipment, sending the equipment out to the locations, training the poll workers in conjunction with the Board of
You
Canvassers.
do a lot of that.
Yes, and we also have a mail ballot drop boxes to support the mail ballot option. We do have a mail ballot drop box at each of those 4 locations that will be open in Portsmouth as well.
Okay. Are you still looking for poll workers in Portsmouth for this upcoming election? Do we know?
We're working on it.
Working on it. Working on it. Okay.
Yes, we have many of the slots have been filled,
Okay.
and many more
All right.
people.
And then there's extensive training to do that, right?
Correct, yeah. So we conduct the training for the polls. In a statewide election, we conduct the training for about 4,000 individuals statewide. We do that in conjunction with the local boards. They actually hire the poll workers and pay the poll workers, but the state Board of Elections actually has to train the poll workers.
Okay.
So in the case of special elections, a lot of times the local communities have the benefit that they can pick the best workers usually, because they have fewer spots that need to be filled in most cases. So they do have the advantage that they do have a good crop of folks to pick from.
Okay, fantastic. Were you going to jump in there, Jackie?
We are just very fortunate that we do have members of the community who are willing to serve us as poll workers. We cannot offer election day options without their service, and it is
Right.
absolutely vital.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that the men and women that serve as poll workers, I mean, they are trained by Miguel and by Jackie and their teams, and they're really charged with running election day. At the state and local level, you know, we do what we can, of course, to make sure that election day is run smoothly, but you've got people, you know, regular citizens in each community that are making sure that election day is run smoothly, and that's who people interact with when they go vote. So it's an important position, and it's great that we've got so many really good poll workers out there that are civic-minded and are doing it for the right reasons.
Yes, and serious thank you to all of them, right?
Yes.
So there are these three ways to vote, basically, I heard you say. So are you seeing changes in, like you said, going in person is fewer and fewer, huh? Or what are the trends happening?
The trends are certainly going towards voting before Election Day.
Yeah.
Our first major...
The emergency.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
In our first major election, not just emergency, but also mail voting as well.
Okay, using the mail, yeah.
I mean, we saw a tremendous surge with the election, the presidential preference primary in June, where we had 83% of voters vote prior to Election Day. And that did...
In the state?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And that did dip for the primary to just over 70%, 73%. But for the November general election, 62% of folks voted before Election Day. So that is certainly something that is trending that way. And even for our special referendum that we just passed, you know, over 60% of folks voted before Election Day. So it's certainly something that we've seen as a trend moving forward.
Yes.
And that's why we've invested so much in the infrastructure to process all of the increased volume of mail ballots that we're seeing
Right.
now, and as well as the changes that have been done to the emergency period.
Yeah. And Jackie, you said a lot have come in already, right?
Over 1,400 applications have
Nice.
been processed,
Nice.
so.
Okay. Wow. Well, what are some of the, you know, given national politics and all the crazy things happening around our country, you know, as it relates to elections, how has that impacted Rhode Island? And what are you all noticing? I feel pretty proud of our state personally. Can one of you speak to that and how we're doing?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll start.
Okay, Rob, thank you.
I'm equally as proud. I think that to put Miguel's last statement about the increase, I mean, we've never had more than, in 2016, we had 41,000 people vote by mail, 41,000 in 2016. In 2020, in November, it was 180,000-ish. So, I mean,
By
that
mail.
was by mail, that's right. And so to work with partners to make sure that that was done successfully and smoothly, I mean, it's really a great thing for the state that we've now provided this convenient option for people, whether it's by mail or voting before Election Day. People are voting when it's convenient for them, which I think is really important. I think that's why we saw a record turnout in Rhode Island. 521,000 people voted. I think the previous high was about 475,000 or so. So it shattered the record, but I think that is a testament to, I think, voters having confidence in the system. And I think you're right. There is a national there is some stuff out there nationally that has created I think a ton of misinformation and disinformation about elections. And I'll give just one example, and I'll talk about mail ballots because they were so prevalent in 2020 and since then, but that's a true partnership between the three offices where when you apply for a mail ballot, like they're doing now with Jackie, the city and town make sure that they compare the signature on the application to the voter registration system.
So Jackie does that?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's the first step in the process, to make sure people understand that the integrity of mail ballots is there, it's secure. We're sending ballots to people who requested them. We don't just send them out to anybody, because Jackie compares the signatures before we even send a ballot out. Someone signs the
Wow.
application, Jackie looks at every single signature to make sure they match. And if they do, we send a ballot. We send a ballot out.
Okay,
And if they
right.
don't, we contact the voter. We will send out an email, I'll make a phone call, we send a letter out telling them that their signature has been rejected. And it can be for a variety of reasons. We have some students who signed the Department of Motor, or the Division of Motor Vehicles application when they were 18 years old, and now they're 25.
Yeah.
Their signature changes. So we update the signatures, we notify them. if you're going to have a signature rejected, this is the time to do it, because you still have options to vote.
Right.
If there is a problem with your signature on your ballot,
Yes.
then your options are very limited.
Okay, so you're the one catching it first. That's
We
the first
try
step.
to catch it first. We're not
Right.
FBI investigators, but we do our due diligence, and we look at every single signature that is before us.
Okay.
And I think it should be mentioned that it's not something people should fear that they're not going to be able to get that ballot because of
Right.
that signature, because there's very few cases where the signature does not match or so far off that the local board wouldn't issue. I think, Jackie, you had like 12 rejections.
Of the 1,400 ballots,
12 rejections.
you've looked at all of them, and 12 just had a flag and you contacted them.
Two people did not sign, and
Okay.
and all of those people have been contacted, letting them know that they...
That feels good.
And prior to the elections last year, we actually, my agency coordinated a training, signature verification training for our local boards, in addition to our own staff who matched the signatures on the back end, which we'll cover. But that was done by an instructor who was a former FBI signature analyst that would give training for a couple of hours on how to recognize similarities with different
I
signatures.
wish I could sit in on that. That sounds
we
actually
can-
pretty fascinating.
We have a few tricks in the
I'm
office, too.
sure you do.
But I just think
All
it's
right,
important
so,
to
yeah,
note that
keep going.
every
I interrupted you.
signature is looked at, every signature is scrutinized. We
Yep.
don't just send out ballots to anybody. So once Jackie and her 38 counterparts verify a signature, we then have the authority to send the ballot out. And so, for example, the 1,400 applications that have come through Portsmouth, everybody's mail ballots are in the mail. So if you applied for a mail ballot in Portsmouth, you're going to be getting it in the next couple days. And so that's what triggers us to send the ballot out. And so we send it out, the voter will get their ballot, they open it, they vote their ballot, and they put it inside we call it an oath envelope, and they sign that oath envelope in front of 2 witnesses or a notary, which is a little bit of a change from 2020 because of COVID. That requirement was removed, and our office supports the removal of that requirement indefinitely, but it's currently a law. So when someone signs the oath envelope with their ballot inside, 2 witnesses or a notary have to witness it, and then they send the ballot back to Miguel at the Board of Elections, who then Miguel can talk about on their end what happens to the signature and the ballot before it's even counted.
Okay, yeah. So then, let's hear about that.
So as I mentioned, there's a variety of ways for folks to return their ballot. They can use one of the 41 drop boxes. There's a drop box. This is for a statewide election. I don't want to confuse our Portsmouth voters.
There's not 41 in Portsmouth.
No, there
Okay,
are not. So
okay,
we'll talk in
okay.
specifics to this Portsmouth election. There are 3 drop box options for Portsmouth, which would be the main drop box that is in Portsmouth. We also have the drop box in Cranston at our facility. And Plainfield Pike, and then we also have the drop box at Rob's office at the Elections Division in Providence. So those are the 3 drop boxes. On Election Day, they have the drop boxes available at each of the locations that will be open, the 4 sites that will be open on Election Day. So those can be returned that way, or they can use regular postal service. They can drop them into the mail, and those will go to our P.O. box in Providence. We will retrieve those, and those ballots are all brought back to our facility where they're processed. They're processed through our high-speed sorting equipment, which essentially we're able to open those envelopes, remove the inside envelope, because their outer envelope is only a mailing envelope. The inside is where the actual signature of the voter and the 2 notaries or the 2 witnesses occurs. Once we have removed all those envelopes, we'll actually do what's called a certification process. So just prior to the certification, we'll actually look at those envelopes and see if anyone has forgotten to sign, has actually forgotten to get it witnessed or notarized, and we'll immediately send them a letter indicating that they need to correct this issue prior to the deadline, which for this particular election will be 7 days after Election Day. And that will...
Issues are usually of what kind?
Those are just considered facially deficient, meaning that they forgot to sign, or they
Right.
forgot to get it witnessed or notarized.
Okay.
So we'll let them know we did receive your ballot. We'll send them a form that they need to have signed and notarized to make that correction, so we can actually count their ballot. But we have it in receipt. Then once those ballots have cleared that first portion of the check, then they'll go through a certification, signature certification, where we'll have 2 of our staff members will compare each of the signatures on those ballot envelopes to the actual signatures on the applications that Jackie in her office actually matches to the central voter registration system. And if those signatures do match according to our staff, then those ballots will be cleared for being counted. If there is a discrepancy in the signatures, then those ballots will be sectioned off, provisioned, and essentially we'll send them a letter and wait for them to return that notice with that correction, which is basically to sign a new form, have it notarized, and have it witnessed. We do have some leeway when we look at these ballots. We tend to look at the category. If it's a category where someone perhaps is in a nursing home, or is in a category where they're disabled, then we are allowed in the law to have some leeway as far as if they don't put their first initial, don't put their whole first name. So it's not something that has to be identical to what is on the voter registration list, but we do have that training where we do see similarities between different signatures, and if something does not look at all like the original signature, either from the application or from the central voter registration system, as we've done in the past, then that ballot will be segregated, and we'll have to send a letter to that particular voter.
Wow, that process, wow. Yeah, Jackie,
There is
jump
one
in here.
important thing I would like to make
Yeah.
clear. If anyone who has a mail ballot has a difficulty finding 2 witnesses or a notary, please contact our canvassing office. We'll make arrangements to have your envelope notarized and to provide witnesses for you.
All right, I'm so struck by the personal touch, Jackie, as you and I have talked about what your office does and the links you go to make sure things are fair and accurate. So before we wrap up, you mentioned there are 4 polling places in Portsmouth. Jackie, will you tell us where those are?
There is one located on Prudence Island at the Hope Brown Center for those in precinct 2721. Anybody who votes in precinct 2702, 03, and 04 will go to the Portsmouth High School, Old Gym, door number 8. And anybody who votes in precincts 2705 and 06 will come to the town hall.
Okay.
And anybody who votes in precincts 2707 and 8 will go to the Portsmouth Middle School Gymnasium.
All right. So we have just about a minute left, and I want to give any of you the opportunity to leave our viewers with any words of wisdom. I'm taking from you, I better read my ballot accurately and follow the directions accurately, but anything else you all want to throw out there?
Yeah, I'd just like to say you
Thank
can
you.
trust the process. I mean, it's important to get out there and vote, especially in this election here in Portsmouth that's going to affect people for a real long time. But you can trust the process. We've got good people working in elections. We've got processes in place to make sure that your vote is safe and secure. So get out and vote on November 2nd. Get out and vote in every election you possibly can.
Fantastic, thank you. We're going to put a link to the sample ballot for our viewers with this video. So really, really appreciate all the guests. Thank you. Rob Rock, Jacqueline Schultz, Miguel Nunez. We really appreciate having the triumvirate of the 3 organizations that keep things fair and safe for us in our elections. Much appreciated. Before we go, I have a public service announcement for everyone. We have the American Recovery Plan Act, or ARPA, was passed by Congress to provide the American people with resources to help recover from the effects of the pandemic. The town needs your help in determining where to invest ARPA funds. Information on ARPA is available on the town website, portsmouthri.com. The town has a survey to gather citizen comments on ARPA investments, and the survey can be completed online. We're providing the link for you right now. Hard copies of the survey are also available at the town hall, the library, and the Prudence Island Fire Station. We hope everybody will participate and get out there and vote on November 2nd. Thanks so much for joining us.